Hi everyone, Editing Ben here, and I have a quick announcement before we get started on tonight's video. Next weekend will be the Worldwide Write-a-thon, and I'll be hosting one of the productivity sprints. Specifically, I'll be hosting Productivity Sprint 4, which is the 3 to 5:30 a.m. time slot, my time. I'll be joined by author Lauren Adele, Nicole the Blind Mage, and Martin Lejeune as we work on all of our writing projects. I have chapters to write in my current work in progress. I have scripts to write for upcoming videos. I have a lot to get done during those really early time slots. So if you are having trouble sleeping, or if you're in an earlier time zone and want to get your day started off perfectly productive, come join in for my productivity sprint. I hope to see you there, whether you are writing or editing or folding laundry, and I hope to make your weekend a little more productive. Take care. Hello! I'm Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write, where I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. Season 3 of Running to Write is coming to a close. For these last 2 episodes, and to honor that achievement, I'm going to be fulfilling a viewer request and walking through the tools I use to format and then later publish my novel. This week I'll be focusing on the tool I use to format my novel, namely Reedsy, as well as using it to find professional editors. And next week I'll be going through the tool I use to publish and distribute my debut novel, Falling Through, which was through Ingram Spark. Every writer I know has their preferred tool to format their manuscripts, from vellum to Calibre. Well, Reedsy was my go-to. This is not a paid advertisement, and believe me, I wish it was. This is me walking through and showcasing how I used Reedsy and, next week, Ingram Spark. Reedsy is free to use for importing and formatting our novels. Its primary purpose is to hire professional editors. Once the manuscript is all set, there's a marketplace to select the editor and the editing service for our manuscript. For the purposes of this demo, I'm using an intentionally badly formatted version of the first 2 chapters of the second book in the Into the Void series. This is currently with a professional editor, and by the time this video gets uploaded, will likely be close to being published, which is something incredible to say out loud. The first 2 chapters are also available to those who sign up for my newsletter, so if anything you see on screen piques your interest, please feel free to sign up. The link is in the description below. As for the formatting issues, there are currently 2 chapters plus this little notes section, and each of them are formatted slightly differently. This prelude section with the notes has the default formatting set up. This is the first chapter, where the chapter title uses heading 3 instead of heading 1, and the paragraphs are formatted with some odd hanging indent options. As for the second chapter, I went a little overboard in how the indents function. This will be a nightmare to undo in most settings for the tools that we use. You can see here that the chapter title doesn't have any headings, and that the paragraphs themselves are indented in seemingly at random. This is an exaggeration of an issue I had, but it's not far off. It worked out well for this demo, but it didn't really work out well for me in real life. There were some issues where the professional editor went through and reformatted my entire manuscript. In doing so, it made it extremely difficult to add new chapters or to copy and paste from other sources into that document without completely messing with the entire formatting. And yes, I know that there are certain paste special options, but those didn't really work right, and a lot of times it never looked good. So I basically had to clear all formatting and start over. In fact, it was so bad that Reedsy couldn't actually read the imported file, so I needed to manually copy each chapter in for the 38, 40 some odd chapters that were in my book. It's a bit of a pain. This is the Reedsy user interface, specifically where it showcases the books that I have available. Right now you can see Falling Through, the book I've just finished and is out there published. There's the first 2 chapters, the sample, which I send out for those who sign up for our newsletter. And there's a short story I wrote, which by the time this comes out should be included in an anthology. So that's a lot of fun. Now, right here, you can also import or just create a new book if you want to give it a title. I'm going to go ahead and import it because I already have it written externally. As for the book title, book 2 doesn't technically have a title yet, so I'm just going to make this as generic as possible. And you'll see that it took a very short amount of time. For a longer manuscript, I think Falling Through has a good 5-10 minute wait because it was 90,000 words. And like I said, the first version was not formatted the best, so there were a lot of issues there. For shorter stories, this is nearly instantaneous. Now I click on Write, and I'm taken right into the novel. There's this nice little tutorial, which I'm going to skip because it's pretty basic, and I'm going to go through most of the tooling anyways. Immediately, you can see that each of the 3 sections were broken off and assumed to be chapters. Now, although Notes is not a chapter per se, I do appreciate that it was separated off like this. It makes it much easier to manage. And you'll see that each of these chapters are now formatted exactly the same, despite their paragraph and page layouts being completely different. You can see here that the Notes is listed as a chapter heading, and everything underneath is formatted fairly well. These are a whole bunch of different options that you can use, and I'll go over them briefly after I go through the basics of how this was uploaded. Emergency Broadcast, which was Chapter 1, is now recognized as Chapter 2. That's not a big issue. It's very easy to move around, and you can see that the format matches the format from the previous chapter, even though in the uploaded file, they were fairly different. Now time for the moment of truth. This one was formatted completely differently in terms of paragraph and page layout, and it's all been normalized, which is wonderful. This makes it really easy for formatting. Now to go through some of these settings, this is automatically set to a paragraph, and I can change the options within Reedsy to make this look however I want. I like the defaults, so I'm not going to mess around with this too much. So here are all the different formatting options I can have. I can make this bold, I can make this italics, underline, strike through, etc. As this is the POV for the chapter, I like setting it as centered with the default text size. I could also make this H1, though it puts it back to the left. I can make this H2, heading 3. But again, I really just like regular default paragraph and centered. That's the way that I did it in the first book, and that's the way I'm doing it here. There's also bullets, and you can add in some quotes. So just sort of play around with each of these. They're pretty standard in terms of the formatting available to you. I kind of like it mostly as default, where there's the chapter title, there's the POV centered, and then everything else is the basic paragraph. But you can get really fine-grained and detailed in here. You'll see that the chapters are on the left, and you can edit and modify the copyright details to some pretty fine information. I can include the ISBNs, I can include the publisher name, I can include a logo. There's all these default clauses which I can select or deselect as needed, and I can also include some additional notes. So this is a custom copyright for testing. Whatever I really want to do. Now the first thing I'm going to do is remove this from the chapter heading, which means that it gets dragged above, and that automatically brings down Emergency Broadcast from Chapter 2 to Chapter 1. Really a great feature. For demo purposes, I'm going to add in a new chapter. This will be Chapter 3. A bit hard to drag sometimes. And I'm just going to give it a title of Chapter 3. Really kind of basic. Now, I want to start writing, and I'm going to go through the features on the right side, which are really cool. Goals and insights. Let's say I want to set this as a target of 50,000 words. That is a lot less than what this story ultimately is, but I can set a specific goal for myself. So we got 50,000, and I'm going to say I want to get that by the end of the month. So, spoiler alert, I'm recording this in August. Let's say I want to get it done by September, which will be before this gets uploaded. Now I have a nice little total for the manuscript, and I can keep adding goals as I want. Now right now the word count is 5,300 based on the first 2 chapters, and I think it includes the notes section as well. And it says that I want to get there within a month. Difficult, but still doable. And you can see that right now I am 10% of the way there. In order to get there, I'm going to add in a writing goal. So this will be, I don't know, words per week, where I want to write 10,000 words each week. I'm going to create that goal. And now you can see right here, I have some words. So I'm just going to start typing, and those words get added in. Now, if I wanted to, I could copy and paste this from a different source. So let's say I did all my writing in an external document and I wanted to copy it in here. Well, guess what? Those words still count, which is really cool. I can also expand the goal to take in more than just this chapter. So now we're looking at all the words combined. This helps give me very focused details on both the minutia of the current work in progress chapter, as well as how it compares to the overall manuscript. Here's a little fun fact. Because I set this up for testing, I have a monthly goal set up where I was going to do 1,000 words for a specific writing project. That was just to test the features in preparation for this demo. Since I haven't written in the short story in the past day, it sent out an email to keep me on track, which is really kind of motivating for me. Next up is the track changes and comments. Not too much here, but it is really helpful to be able to work backwards and fix mistakes and do various things where you can see the progress of your novel over time. So I can see all the various things I'm doing, and worst case, I can make changes however I see fit. This is very similar to track changes in Word, and it's useful when you're going through and editing. Next up is the writing timeline. This shows various versions of the book itself and the manuscript, so that way if something catastrophic goes wrong, I can work backwards and go to a previous version. Now this is taking some time because it hasn't actually set anything up because this is a new manuscript, but now I can do whatever I want and go back to previous sections or previous iterations of the manuscript. Again, this is really helpful and can be a bit difficult to use in Word. I know that Word has these functions and features, but this makes it all very seamless for somebody using Reedsy. I am a huge proponent of backing up my writing. I have multiple thumb drives and cloud directories which get rotated through on various cycles, and this can streamline a lot of that. Having this feature here means I need to do less and fewer copies across the various thumb drives, and it's all saved on the cloud, so worst case, if my computer gets destroyed somehow or something awful happens, I have a backup stored somewhere. Just so you know, I changed this around as there were a lot of default settings within Reedsy, so now I have some actual paragraphs here to show you a little bit better of what's going on. I am going to showcase the search and replace feature because this was extremely helpful. Long story short, one of the editors used a different format and style than a different editor and then my preferences. So in the original Falling Through, I had Lewis's, which then got changed to Lewis's without the S at the end. And now that I've gone back to Chicago style for grammar, I've gone back to do Lewis's. So the possessive of the name includes the S at the end. What I'm going to do here is find and replace it. So we have Lewis's, and I'm going to replace them all with Lewis's. I want to make sure there's a space there because that will sort of fudging this demo a little bit, but you can see the point. So every instance of Lewis's with just one apostrophe, no S, will be replaced with Lewis's with the S. And you can see exactly which chapters use it. If I had more chapters, it would be easier to see, but right here it lists off the one instance that is found in there. And I'm going to go ahead and hit replace all. Pretty basic stuff, again. Nothing too fancy here, but it is a very nice thing to have. I also have this option to search only in this chapter or search the entire manuscript. For example, if I have Wayfield, which is Tracy's last name, it will be in both this chapter and the chapter I copied it from. So you can see two different examples of the word Wayfield. Next up is the spelling and grammar check. I don't really use Reedsy's features for this, but it is, again, something that is nice to have. A lot of times it's names that are causing issues. This is a fantasy story, so I did make up a lot of words, and they get hit every single time. Yeah, of those 15 suggestions, almost all of them were proper names and words I made up. Fun times. What this means is that Reedsy has all the basics of Word, but with the added bonus of being online and being good for formatting. I cannot stress how often I had tabs misaligned or various pages which didn't look like any of the others. I might not have had so many issues if I weren't transferring from my writing laptop to my regular laptop with internet connection to all the editors who tweak the page layouts to better look for issues. The point is, Reedsy gave me a great way to normalize everything and collect it together. Some of these last features are inserting images or scene breaks. I don't add in images to my manuscript. It's all text, but I do add in a lot of scene breaks, and this helps. So right there is a nice little scene break. Looks pretty good. I can customize that further, but I like the default. Then there's this lovely little split chapter. Let's say this chapter was much longer. I could go ahead and split it right here. So I'm going to confirm the split, and we're going to make a chapter 4. Again, all very basic features, but some very, very nice things to have. Let's say I realized I made a mistake and I wanted to delete this chapter. Well, that option's there. Very easy to do, very simple. It gives me a warning to make sure that I want to absolutely do this. And chapter's gone. Luckily though, if I realize I made a mistake in making the mistake, I can always go back to the previous version where that chapter existed. So I can see right here that chapter 4 is still present, even though in the current version it is gone. Although I went back to the version where it was still there, so that's my mistake. And we are back to the previous version where I deleted that chapter. These are all the basics, but there's some fun things that you can add to it. So for instance, I could add a dedication, I could add a foreword, I could add a preface, which is what I did with my notes. I'm going to go ahead and remove some of those. And there's also stuff I can add to the end of it, where I can add in about the author or an also by section for me. There's a lot of really useful features within the defaults and some great ways to get the book to look beautiful without having the skills to make it do so. I can honestly say that I have no idea how I would do this if I were approaching it in Calibre or in Word or in whatever tool I'm using, but here I know exactly what I'm doing. Some of these features aren't available as I can't really delete this chapter or cut it out or insert anything here, but that helps keep me narrowed and focused to what really matters, which is putting the words on the page. The last feature I'm going to showcase about writing and formatting the book is the export feature. This is where Reedsy truly shines. You can see that I can hide numbers, I can use drop caps, I can do whatever I want to explicitly format the book. There are a few options. These are all great. I can also include some book settings for the cover and the specific details within. So if I have a custom cover for my manuscript, I can include that here. All kinds of fun stuff. But right now I'm just going to focus on the exporting. So I'm going to, I like the chapter numbers in there. I'm going to include drop caps because I think it looks cool. I can include this as both a PDF or as an EPUB and Mobi. Then there's one last version of this where I can export it directly as a Word document. But now that my manuscript is all ready and formatted as I want it, I'm going to go ahead and hit Export Book. And it'll send me an email, or I could just download it here directly within a few minutes. While my book is pending and being generated, I want to mention how Reedsy has one little nuance when you're hiring professional editors, in that they don't seem to have access to my books within Reedsy. That's good from a privacy standpoint, but does make one extra step that I need to go through. They require usually docx's, so in order to do that, I just click this backup button right here, and that'll be generated on its own. This is odd, but not really difficult to get the editors what they need. Also, if I want to get a physical copy of my book, I can go through Blurb to do it. Again, all these are really convenient and incredibly powerful tools and features to have to ensure that my manuscript looks good and that it prints as I want it, as I see it and envision it in my head. After pressing the refresh button, The download is ready within a few minutes. I did sort of do some editing tricks here, but I will say that the ebook was ready to go in less than 2 minutes. Also, Reedsy emailed me both files. This is the Word file that was generated, and you can see that there's the forward section, though that's blank. Each of these chapter headings have a heading 1 setting for formatting, and everything else is first paragraph or default. Heading 1, first paragraph, text body. All looks good to me. And this is the generated EPUB file. It does look a little basic. I didn't do too much with the formatting to make it look prettier. That's all going to come through in Ingram Spark. This video and Reedsy was really all about getting the tool to look visually consistent. I could do a lot more to expand on this or to make it look better, but I found that I like working with Ingram Spark, so I'm not focusing on that in this video. Here's the lovely copyright, forward, and emergency broadcast. Everything looks good. Got the little large letters at the start of the chapter. A couple of fun additional tricks. Let's say I don't like the name of this book right here. I'm going to go ahead and change it because I don't want to have the word test in there. And right there, I just removed the word test and we are good to go. I can add in some subtitles. And I can add in some synopsis. I can upload book covers. I can make this look pretty. I can make this really feel like a whole book. And the last feature I'm going to show is hiring a professional. This will give you an idea for what you can look for when using this tool. Now there's various different features I can look for. So there's editing, there's design, there's publicity, there's marketing, everything that I am terrible at. As this book is currently with a developmental editor, I'm going to sign up and look for a copy editor. I'm also going to change the genre to be urban fantasy. And that's a pretty good place to start. There are 32 professionals listed. I can see the reviews. I can see what other services and books they've worked on. I can view more of their profile. I can reach out to up to 5 people for a single book of mine. It's all integrated very well and it flows very nicely. It's very easy to use to find a good match for my book. And there you have it. This is the generated book. It doesn't have the cover. It doesn't have a lot of the fancy things, but it is there and it's formatted well. I'm going to go through with Ingram Spark on how to make this look much better, but I wanted to get everything normalized and to show how I formatted my novel to be ready for professional editors and to be ready for uploading into Ingram Spark. I hope you enjoyed this tour of Reedsy and can use it to format your books or hire a professional editor. I am Ben Pick and thank you for joining me in Running to Write. Let me know in those comments what tool you use to format your manuscripts. Do you use Reedsy? Do you use Vellum? What works for you? I post my running and writing progress on Instagram and Twitter as Running to Write, so be sure to follow me and join in with your own thoughts. Don't forget to sign up for the Running to Write monthly newsletter for regular updates on my sort of musings, pitfalls, and lessons learned. As added incentive for signing up, you will get the first 2 chapters that I showed today for the second book in my End of the Void series. As a bonus, I'll also be sending out links to the outtakes of my various videos. They are F-bomb laden, so you've been warned. The links will also be sent to those who follow me on Ko-fi first, and then I'll be distributing them through the newsletter at a later date. See you next time. Until then, get your manuscripts normalized and formatted through Reedsy so they can be edited and published.